Well, greetings, fellow travelers, and welcome to Life Mastery TV, your source for inspiration, empowerment, and fulfillment. My name is David McLeod. I am your Life Mastery coach and your host for today's episode of Life Mastery TV. Today, we're going to be talking about something that I think is really important. It's called the power of awareness. Now, awareness, as I'm sure you already know, is something that we all have access to, but as it turns out, many of us don't really take full advantage of its amazing power and capabilities. In the life mastery paradigm, awareness is actually the foundational skill upon which all the other skills are built. And so it's really important to have a deep and powerful understanding of this amazing capability. So I've invited an awareness expert to join me on the show today. Let me tell you a little bit about Laina Orlando. Inspired by her own spiritual awakening, Laina Orlando loves to simplify spirituality so it's easy to understand and practical to apply in everyday life. Her mantra is, life is fun and easy. And I know this, she lives this way because I get to know her and I get to see her quite a bit. Anyway, Laina is an author, speaker, awareness coach, receiver of the Power of Awareness program, and director of the Awareness Academy. Please welcome Laina Orlando. Thank you, Laina. It's so great to have you on the show, and it's so great to see you again and be in space with you again. I'm noticing your microphone is muted at the moment.
Yes, I was coughing, so I turned it off for a second.
Good for you. Anyway, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here. As always, it's an honor to be in your presence.
Well, and I really enjoy being in space with you as well. We've shared a lot of different experiences together. We met at the Messenger Summit quite a few years ago now, I think. Yeah. About 5 years ago or 6 years ago or something like that.
I think longer than that, 7 years ago. Yeah.
And I felt an immediate connection with you, and I just really love your presence and how you show up. And so I'm really delighted to have you here as well. And yes, we're talking about the power of awareness. Now, I know this is one of your favorite topics. You've told this to me, and that's precisely why I wanted to have you here. And now I made a mention of this at the beginning, that awareness is something that we all have access to, but as it turns out, many of us don't really take full advantage of that too. How do you feel about that statement? Does that feel accurate to you?
Very accurate. Very accurate. Most of us know that we're aware of things, but none of us, until we deliberately do this, are self-aware, actually self-aware.
Right.
And so if you're not self-aware, you're really not aware.
Right. And just to be clear, can you help us understand what you mean by self-awareness?
Yeah, self-awareness is realizing what we are. And that means it goes beyond the body. It's a recognition that we are thinking beings. So there is a mental component. We are energy beings. So there's that awareness of our non-physical space, because we all have a non-physical energy. That's what energy is, that we all have a field of energy that we operate within. Mm-hmm. And also we have an emotional body. So there's emotions, there's thinking, there's energy, and then there's this physicality. Right. And if you're not aware of all of these components, you don't know how to regulate yourself, because you're always going to be reactive, because you're only aware of what's happening externally, and then you react to it. But to be self-aware, you need to know what's going on internally, and you need to be aware of all those different aspects of ourselves.
Right.
We're very complex beings.
Yes, I agree with that. What you described is what I call, the holistic human, which in my mind consists of, I think of it as a 4-part being. It's heart, body, mind, and soul. Mm-hmm. And any one of those pieces, if it's not fully activated and alive within us, it gives us a sense of incompletion. Of unfulfillment, of dissatisfaction. And so once we can activate all 4 of those components to the same level, then life just becomes more magical and more beautiful and more enjoyable.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly, because those 4 components, when we become aware of them, we typically become aware of them maybe one at a time, maybe two at a time. And we kind of bounce inside of those different components when we begin to become aware. Then the journey is about balancing them. It's about an integration of all four. So they're operating optimally. And the best definition that I can use or analogy is we all believe that who we are is like the analogy of a car. We've got this average Ford car, but in reality, what we are is a very sophisticated Maserati, and most of us have no idea what to do with the sophistication that we have, and we're content to just turn it on, drive, putter from here to there, and come back. And that's how most of us live our lives. We think we're moving, going somewhere, but we really we're totally unaware that we're inside of a very sophisticated vehicle and energy and beingness.
Right. Well, of course, you and I, we speak the same language, and so we both understand this on a pretty deep level. But how do we get other people to awaken to the fact that maybe they're not as aware as they could be, and to bring their awareness higher will really empower them to have the ability to see the Ford for the Maserati?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and that's really the $1 million question. And it typically starts, I find that this is the case for at least everybody that I've worked with, and being a coach, and I call myself an awareness coach for the past 13 years. It's pretty much the same thing. We begin to enter the journey of self-awareness when something stops us in our tracks. Right. We look at our lives and something major happens. For me, it was the death of my mother that sent me into my self-awareness journey, because I wanted to become aware of why am I grieving so deeply. It just seemed out of proportion. My grieving my mother's death and what I was experiencing just felt that it was totally, completely off. My grief was so deep. And although losing my mom was a pretty traumatic experience, there was too much trauma and too much drama for sure. So as people were saying to me, you may want to get some help here, because you're getting depressed. The grieving is disproportionate to what had happened. So anyhow, somebody experiences something traumatic like that, it's a pause. And in that pause, you want to know, okay, what else can I do here? The other thing is, without something traumatic, some people just say, you know what? There's got to be a better career. There's got to be a better relationship. There's got to be more to life than this. Just an antsy feeling like there's got to be more. So it typically happens with a desire to know what else is there. Again, for most people, it usually happens when something big changes and it kind of feels like things are going out of control and you want to help yourself. Like for a drug addict, when you hit that rock bottom, finally, you want to really get help. But for most of us, it begins with a subtle nudge to wanting to know there's more. And that typically sends us into what I call the self-help movement. And in self-help, we begin to help ourselves know more about ourselves, but it's still more about a becoming more in relationship to the world. But those two ways are points of entry into knowing more about our inner world. Because eventually, if you don't come inside, if you don't stop trying to make more money or get a new lover or get something externally, and when you make that U-turn and you come inside, that's when the self-awareness kicks in, at least in my experience.
Yeah. Well, everything you said certainly resonates with my experience. I've certainly went through, the dark night of the soul and the awakening process. And for me, it was a fairly lengthy process. The better part of 20 years. Well, forget about the time that I spent getting deeper and deeper and deeper into this hole.
Yeah.
But the time it took me to get out of the hole and to learn all the things that I needed to know and to become aware of, so that I could start living a very healthy and happy life, that took some time. And this is a challenge that I find for a lot of people. Everybody's looking for that instant gratification, that quick fix. And unfortunately, I mean, there's some good Band-Aids out there, some really good ones that give you that momentary happiness, that momentary gratitude or gratification, and it lasts for a little while, and it might even seem like it's doing some good for you. But the problem is, many of those things don't have a lasting impact because they are not dealing with the stuff that's really important. And as you said, it's all about that stuff inside. Mm-hmm. As I tell my clients, in is the only way out.
Yes, exactly. And the other analogy, and one of the wonderful things is that analogies really paint a clear picture. But the other analogy is that of gardening. And I love gardening, and I love tending to my flowers, the plants that I really want to enjoy them blooming year after year after year. But the journey to self-awareness requires that if you want that garden to be beautiful, you have to take care of it. But to take care of it, you also have to take care of the weeds. And the Band-Aids that you're talking about is pulling the weeds at the top on the surface.
Right.
The real deeper work of self-awareness, you got to dig the weeds from the root up.
Exactly.
And then you got to find out where are these weeds coming from, because once you begin to take them out, then the work is to keep them from coming in. And that's the work, that's the mental work, that's looking at the fears, that's looking at our belief system. And then the tilling of the soil is the emotional work. You gotta let the movement of the energy that's been stored, that old unprocessed anger and resentments and judgments and self-loathing, you got to move that soil. You got to fertilize it with new things, with freshness and goodness and love, but you got to till it, you got to move it. And most people don't want to feel those old emotions. We don't want to touch them, and we want to just pull the weeds by at the top. They're going to keep coming back. That's why there's the only way out is you got to go in. You got to go into that soil, which means you got to go into your psyche. You got to go into your emotional body. You've got to go into those places where you felt wounded as a young child. It starts from that moment of conception. The process begins to happen. And we've got to get familiar with the part of ourselves that is the keeper of all of our fears, the holder of that thought system, which is our ego mind.
Exactly.
So you got to be familiar with what is your ego, what role does it play, understand it. And the process of becoming aware of our ego is the process of becoming aware of ourself. Because our ego aspect is what blocks us from really knowing that soul that we are. We know you're talking about those 4 aspects. Well, the soul of who we are is our whole, complete, magnificent, totally, completely eternal self. But we don't live with awareness of that soul aspect because we live on the surface of our lives, not in the depths of it.
Right. Yeah, that's very, very interesting, and I really liked your analogy of the garden and the weeds and the roots and all the rest of it. And the other piece, I mean, I've used that a similar analogy, but what I really liked here is your approach to tilling the soil, moving the soil, getting that emotion out of the way, because it's the old emotion, most of which we tend to stuff at an early age because we're somehow taught that it's not okay to show it. And so we stuff it down and hope that it never shows up again. But the problem is, it does show up. It does show up. It comes out in all kinds of weird ways. It finds its way out because it needs to get out of the body. And unfortunately, for the duration of time that we actually stuff it, we may be creating all kinds of other negative consequences on our bodies. We're filling ourselves with toxic material
Exactly.
that has a really strong negative impact on our health. And I think this is a big reason why we have so much disease in our world right now, And
it is.
If we could learn to do, as you say, getting down into the deep muck, learning, figuring out what it is that our real root problems are, bringing some loving attention to it, giving ourselves permission to just feel those feelings and heal the stuff that caused those feelings to come into play in the first place, we do all kinds of good for ourselves.
We would.
And eliminate most of those toxic materials, which then make it possible for us to blossom and thrive and grow and become the magnificent beings, the magnificent Maseratis that we are intended to be.
Exactly. And the crazy thing is that, think about it this way. We are literally inside of a Maserati, but because our lack of self-awareness, we have convinced ourselves that it is just a plain beat up Ford.
Right.
And really, not putting down Fords, I don't think I've ever owned one, but I know that they're not all a lot of them are nice, but we paint a picture in our mind that this is an inadequate car. It's not good enough. But all the while, which is why it's an illusion. We live inside of an illusion of who we are, because we're inside a Maserati, but our mind is conditioned to believe that we're inside of a beat up old Ford. And that's where the work is how did I create an illusion? How did I create an idea about myself that has me not know my magnificence, has me operate in a place of emptiness, of depletion, that there's a hole in me that needs to be filled up? How does a mind do that? Well, we don't understand how powerful our mind is, because what we think about, we bring about. You believe that you're unworthy. Well, you get evidence. You get lots of situations that prove your unworthiness. Your friends dump you. Your lover dumps you. Your boss fires you, and you're looking at this. Oh my God, this is happening to me. Well, we convince ourselves that we're unworthy because, as you said, when we were little, we had experiences that we didn't have somebody who taught us how to process them. Because if they knew how to process them, they would not have done that to us to begin with. But because clearly they didn't know how to consciously process their own stuff, we learned to stuff our emotions, stuff our feelings. And that stuffing creates that density that then projects out as unworthiness. And the world is very happy to show us that over and over and over again.
That's right, because the world really is nothing but a giant mirror. It reflects exactly what we put out to it.
Yeah.
As you were talking about the belief structure that comes into play that leads us to believe that this Maserati is actually a Ford, I was thinking about an analogy of my own that I share with people sometimes. That, driving around, your life is kind of like being in a brand new car, where the window, you've got a 360-degree view of the world through perfectly clear windows. This is how you start your life. Well, as you're driving along, guess what? You pick up dust and dirt and bugs and all kinds of things that hit onto your windshield. But this happens so slowly and so gradually that you don't even really notice it for the longest time, until eventually you hit somebody, you bump into somebody else on the road, and you're all mad and angry because this person wasn't paying all attention. And as you get out and you look at your car and say, oh my God, my windows are filthy. You get out and you can see things clearly. So what's happening is, while you're slowly creating this belief system that you're driving in a lousy car, at the same time, your visibility is being reduced. So everything you see outside of your car is starting to look uglier and uglier and uglier. This is the story of many people's lives. Yeah. And they don't even realize it's happening.
Yeah. And that's what's really amazing, is that we don't realize what's happening. And this is why we are all unaware. Mm-hmm. It's very gradual, and it happens to everybody. Everybody descends into this story of being less than who we really are. Some of us sit inside of that and we call that a victim. Others become aggressive to change things, and they're going to go out and make things happen to compensate for that unawareness, and they become bullies. But they're two sides of the same coin. They're two sides of unawareness. And we just show up in one way or another, but they're both present always within us. And the thing about this is the game is designed that way. When you become aware, you realize that it is a game. We've just been playing the game of life without the rule book, but the journey of self-awareness is to get the rule book. And the rule book begins to tell you, you've got to go look at the things that you're believing, because that begins to let you know what is the world reflecting back to you. Because our beliefs are so crucial. We have to understand what we're thinking, because we're playing by the rules of our own immature mind. And not really the playbook that would help us really truly know what's going on here.
Yeah, that's great. You know, this is not a judgment about our conversation at all, but just an observation that because you and I are on the same wavelength, we both are talking about something that people who are listening may not fully understand. So I'm going to shift gears a little bit here. I'm going to ask you, okay, let's suppose then that I am just brand new to this business, this work, and I am acknowledging now, after having heard you, that okay, maybe I'm not as aware as I might be. What do you propose I do in order to become more aware, in order to build my awareness so that I can start to live in a more enlightened way, the way you do?
Well, and that's a wonderful question. And it's, to me, it's very simple. Just ask yourself, what would I like to change about my life? And once you can say, well, I would like to have a lover, or I would like to have more money, or I would like to have more inner peace, I would like to have whatever. When you begin to look at, and this requires a lot of courage. It's easy to say, well, I would like to have more. But then comes the next part that requires a lot of courage, and it's the question of, why do I not already have that? Because in questioning, why do I not already have what I desire, is that you really begin to take an inventory of what you've been believing about yourself, which is then giving you the experience of not having that. Because as that Maserati, that means that in essence, I'm going to be mixing metaphors here, but in essence, the Maserati is a symbol of royalty. We are spiritual royalty. We are here on this planet to have an experience of having a physical experience of our non-physical heart's desires. Our soul is non-physical. You know, when somebody dies, you see a body there, but what is missing is the aliveness. The aliveness is the soul. It's a non-physical energy. You could call it the electricity that powered the body. That aspect of ourselves, that soul, that life that we are, is divine royalty. Is the essence of the Creator, regardless of what you want to call it, taking on a physical vessel, getting inside this vehicle to have an experience that is reflective of our royaltiness, of our Maserati-ness. Okay, so when you say, well, I would like to have more, and then you look at, well, why do I not have that? With a lot of courage and a lot of honesty, then you begin to say, well, I think it's very difficult. I don't think people are going to like me. I have all this experience with relationships where my lovers leave me. My boss fires me. Then you begin to see, okay, so all of these things are happening. The common denominator is yourself. What is it that you're believing about yourself that is drawing to you those experiences? Well, if you say to yourself, well, I'm not a confident person, then you got to go to the place of, if you're divine royalty and you should have this, let's say, let's focus on one thing, this lover, and you don't have a lover, and all of your experiences have been that your relationships fail, and you can pinpoint it, again, with a lot of courage and honesty, well, it's because I lack confidence. You got to go to the point of inception where that misconception got inserted into your psyche. This is where you begin to look at the beliefs that you're having. I'm not confident, but then you got to drill down to the place of the emotional component that solidified that belief in place. So I'm not confident. Well, where did I pick that up? And it may require some therapy. It may require some coaching. Typically, we cannot do this on our own. If we could, all of us would know we're in a Maserati. But we can't do it on our own because the mind is not designed, the ego mind is not designed to let us go inside and see what we've done to ourselves. So get some help. I would strongly recommend get some help with somebody who really understands this. And you go down to, at the point of inception of this belief that I am not confident, you're going to go into childhood. You're going to realize that at 2, at 3, at 4, 5, 6, you came in with this brilliant idea or this brilliant project or something wonderful, and you showed it to your teacher or to your mother or to your grandmother, and they looked at it and they went, "Oh, what is this?" And in that moment, you lost your confidence because somebody gave you their opinion. And because you were a child, that rejection was taken as there's something wrong with me. Right. I'm not confident at drawing. I'm not confident in my singing. I'm not confident in my dancing or whatever I was trying to share from an innocent, childlike place. And that decision that somebody else's opinion about me determines who I am is what we are unaware of. Right. So self-awareness is going into myself and looking at where the beliefs that I have that are not in alignment with me being a whole, perfect, and magnificent being, where is the discrepancy? And then where's the point of inception where that I made an agreement that was my truth? That is the bugs on the windshield. That is the muck that covers up the window. So you cannot see clearly because you're seeing the outside through the I am not confident lens. And you're seeing Absolutely. That through the lens that got created by somebody else's opinion, that they may not have been saying you're not confident. They might have been saying, "Oh, wow, you could do something even more amazing than this." But because we were not mature enough as children to unpack what others were talking about, to not take it personally, we took it personally and gave it a meaning. So now we have a belief, I'm not confident. We have the energy of rejection inside of us. Well, we're going to go out into the world putting off that energy, putting off those beliefs. And guess what? People are going to sense it. They're going to feel it. They're going to hear it in our conversation, and they're not going to want to be around us. So if you can't get a lover, it's because you're manifesting out there the repetition of the same thing that happened when you were a child. So you can have an opportunity to choose again from self-awareness, from maturity, and not from a reactive pattern of self-protection. So that's what I would say we need to do.
That's powerful. That's powerful. And it's, this is very, very much in alignment with the stuff that I teach. It's very, what I have learned as a result of my own work is once I became aware of what you're talking about, it all made perfect sense. Up until that point, my life was just a complete confusion to me. I couldn't understand anything. It just seemed like life was happening to me. I didn't understand that I was in some way creating this life from my own behaviors and my own choices, my own thoughts, my own beliefs, and all that other stuff that was going on. I've come now to believe that the ego mind is not an evil thing that's trying to destroy me. It has a purpose. It has a purpose to help me navigate my way through my physical life. But it also, in its purpose, has a pretty narrow view. And because it's got such a narrow view, it tends to have this idea of separation and aloneness, and I've got to do this by myself, and I am this and I am that. It identifies with everything, including, I hate to say it, but including my illnesses and my weaknesses and all the negative things that I'm trying to move beyond. So one of the things that I have practiced in my own life is becoming aware of when my ego mind is running the show. And then acknowledging and saying, "Hey, okay, thank you so much for that. I'm grateful that you are out there doing what you do to try and keep me safe, to try and protect me from the dangers of the world." And I've looked and I've seen that there really, at this point, for this thing that you're warning me about, there really is no danger. I got it. Thank you so much. I'm going to let my soul run the show from now on. That's kind of the practice that I use with my ego mind now, rather than trying. So many other teachers try to say, get rid of the ego. Well, I'm sorry. As long as you're in a physical body, you're not going to be able to do that. It's just a part of our human experience. So instead, learn to get the ego to be your servant rather than the master. That's really what I think our objective is.
So when you break it down and you really understand what the ego is, it is nothing but a thought system. And so the body, the physical body, has its thought system. And when we focus on just the body, which is one aspect of the four that you were talking about, the thinking that goes with the physical self is all about survival. It's all about protection. It's all about this little piece that is, moving about in the world. It's all about my vehicle.
Exactly.
So the ego part, because we're children and unaware that we don't end just at this physical aspect. What we are is energy that is whether we like it or not, is intermingled with everybody else, because energy doesn't have an end. There's only one energy. Mm-hmm. So we are already connected to all that is, no matter what. Absolutely. But the focus of the ego is on the separation, the individuation. But because it sees that as one of, let's say, 8 billion people, and I'm such a small, tiny person comparing myself to the whole planet and the galaxy and all those other universes of universes, there's a sense of smallness, a sense of lack, a sense of, separation is the best word. So our ego develops this sense of self-protection. But the problem with the ego is that all of the thoughts are about protection, limitation, and survival. So
which all boils down to fear.
Fear, pure and simple.
Yeah.
And when you operate from fear, you don't let yourself experience the benevolence of the universe, that everybody is doing the same, that we're all here, either aware or not aware. Mm-hmm. And so I like, there's a point in the journey where the process is make ego your amigo, which is what I just shared with you a little while ago. What is it that I want? Why do I not have that? When I look at the why do I not have that, I begin to see the beliefs that my ego operates from. Well, I'm not confident. Okay, I'm not confident came from an immature child's perspective. So our ego is always operating at the level of maturity when it becomes solidified. And solidified not as in physical solidify, but a solidity in it has all kinds of beliefs attached to it. So it becomes has its own mass. And once that has its own mass, I'm not good enough. I've got to fight for myself. Nobody takes care of me. I got to do it. It's me against the world. That solidity feels so real that you cannot hear your soul anymore. So the other aspects of who you are, the mind gets totally hijacked by that thought system. So now your soul, your body is carrying the weight of that density, the illness that you carry, the density that takes place shows up in inflammation and sluggishness and weight gain or loss gain. It's all unhealthy. So then what about your heart and your soul? Well, your heart and your soul don't really go away. Just their calling becomes so faint because you're listening to this idea that you got to protect yourself, and you got to be, you against the world. So we have to make ego our amigo, because you got to understand what it's thinking, kind of like a spy. You want to befriend a spy so you know what it's doing. But once you see it and you begin the process of self-awareness, which then turns, once you become aware of these stories that you've made up since you were a child, you literally are going to reparent yourself. That is a process of self-love. So we have to love ourselves to the point that we recognize we've been operating with fears, don't have an ego running the show, like you said. It is not in control. You now have a body that you have made peace with. You have made peace with that aspect of yourself that you thought was so insignificant and small, which is why people are not happy with their bodies, constantly doing things to it. Once you make peace with your body, now your soul, your mind is clear because it's not full of misperceptions. Now you can hear your soul, you can hear your heart's desires. Now you don't have an ego as a master. Your body now is in service to the expression of the love that you are. The soul that you are can now use the body as a communication device. It is communicating your worth. It is communicating your confidence. It is communicating your gentleness, your kindness. Well, when you're operating from love, you're operating from your heart, inherently there is no evil, because there's not a separate thought system that is going against what you are in reality. Your divine royaltiness gets expressed through love, through gentleness, through kindness. So the ego dissolves on its own when you're not thinking things are not true about yourself and others.
Right. Wow. That was great. That was great. I really enjoyed that. I'm wondering, do you have a particular program or something that people could find out about and maybe sign up for that would help them to learn this stuff?
Well, I do. I have if they go to my website, which is lainaorlando.com, they can sign up for a free masterclass, and that takes them through what I call the soul's journey. And it's the 6 phases that we all go through from conception to enlightenment, so that you can become aware of how you forget your royaltiness, how you descend into fear, how you create the density of your thinking. And then it takes you through the 3 phases of becoming self-aware, of doing the healing work, what is necessary. Now it's an overview, and it lasts a little bit over an hour. And it comes, like I said, it's 6 lessons, and you get all the videos at one time, so you can sit and take it all in at once, or digest it over, however long you want to digest it for. And so it gives you a bird's eye view of what has happened to all of us. So you become self-aware. And then after that, then comes the inner work, then comes the individual work. And I do individual coaching, but I am actually in the middle of creating an online course that will take people much, much deeper. That's not ready, but once you signed up for the Soul's Journey Masterclass, I'll be able to have your email. And when I'm ready to launch that other course, which is called The Power of Self-Awareness, when I launch that course, and I can send it to whoever's interested in it, obviously, if they sign up for the masterclass, which is free.
That's fabulous. So that's at lainaorlando.com. They just go there and they'll find this free masterclass on that website.
Correct.
Okay, great. Well, Laina, it's been an absolute pleasure having you here as always, and you're such a delight. You've got so much energy and passion and love, and I'm really grateful that you are here in this world doing this work, because I think it's extremely important for people. So I want to thank you for being here, and watching this show and for participating in today's program. So remember, you can watch recordings of this and any other previous episode on my website at lifemasterytv.com. That's life-mastery-tv.com. And as we move into the Thanksgiving season, I'm going to ask you all to remember what I call the life mastery mantra. And it goes like this: gratefully forgive yourself for the incomplete being you believe you have been. Gratefully accept yourself for all of who you are right now. And gratefully welcome yourself for the evolved being that you are truly becoming. So love, light, and blessings to you on your continuing journey, and I'll see you next time on Life Mastery TV.